In the past, the economy of Star Citizen seemed as though it was kind of geared towards gathering resources, and now with the appearance of the Pioneer, it kind of seems like you're adding this new aspect of gameplay, because instead of just kind of gathering resources and dumping them into a miscellaneous NPC factory, you might want to turn around and sell those resources to somebody who wants to build a base or something along those lines. Do you think there's going to be more player-to-player interaction in the economy moving forward?
There will absolutely be more player-to-player interaction. That's actually the focus of one of the specific pieces of technology that's in development that we're going to try to get out. We'll try with 3.1, but since we're going to a quarterly release schedule next year, it'll become harder to predict any given feature, but it'll be close. And it's close for Tier 1, which will allow for, for some of the functionality, and the rest will basically just come on with subsequent 3.x releases. The idea behind the service beacon is that a player can request something from other players or NPCs, and by that I mean, I'm out in space, I'm thinking that I'm low on fuel, I need to go back to, the nearest space port is Area 18. It's going to take me 5 minutes of quantum travel to get there, and then I need to go through the atmosphere and park, and then I can basically start the process of getting fuel, and then I can get back in my ship and head back to orbit, and then I can jump away and get back to where I'm at. And so you're looking at a significant time investment besides actually buying the fuel. And just like in the real world, if there's a demand for something, then you'll find people that are willing to provide it in exchange for a fee. And so what the service beacon allows you to do is basically put a price on what you're after, and then link other players to you for for that contract. And so in the case of fuel, I can basically say I'm willing to pay whatever, $5 a gallon. I need 1,000 gallons of fuel, and I can put limitations in terms of what the reputation of that person is, how quickly they need to be able to get there. I don't want to wait 30 minutes for somebody that wants to satisfy this from across the other system. You can put limitations in terms of, I only want people within my org to be able to see my transmission, because I don't want to deal with people outside of there. I don't want to like run the risk that I basically turn on my beacon, I basically broadcast I need some fuel, and the guy that shows up is a pirate, and he's basically there to destroy me because he knows I have my ship can't go anywhere because I'm out of fuel. But fuel is just one aspect of it. It could be anything from reloading. Your ship gets destroyed, you eject out of it. You need transport, back to another base. Or you're a miner and you've basically extracted a bunch of valuable ore. You couldn't afford or didn't bother to hire mercenaries, escorts to protect you, and now you've run into now you've basically been interdicted by several pirates, so you're running as fast as you can, but they're closing fast, so you would have the ability to basically request immediate combat assistance, and anybody that any player that's listening that meets the criteria that you lay out can basically agree to accept that. They can then quantum into your location, and then assuming that they satisfy whatever obligations you've specified within the contract, i.e. kill the guys that are trying to kill me in the case of this combat assistance, then they'll get paid automatically with the money that you had to put into escrow in order to to dispatch that. And so what this service beacon is conceptually doing is finding a way for players that want something to be able to be mated with the players that want to provide something. And so then you have the intermediary in terms of what what the obligations are in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of what the specific parameters of the contract are.
So to take that a little step further, do you think players will eventually be able to participate in the economy in such that they're manufacturing goods themselves that might be of a varying quality, so that somebody might want to seek out a certain player so they can get the best version of X? Do you think that's ever in the cards, or? Yeah,
that's something we've talked about many times in the past, and I think like the initial stages, we're still just trying to get the basic foundation up, and so everything is basic. It's trade. Right now, you're buying something here at one price, you're selling it here, and so if you're a clever player, you're going to find you're going to find scenarios where you can get it as cheap as possible. You're basically going to sell it somewhere where you can maximize the return on your time and money investment. The next step would probably involve just the modification, the tweaking, the overclocking for ship engines and stuff like that, to where you're taking existing assets, you're customizing them, and then you're able to to sell those. The final step would basically involve you being able to outright create new items from scratch, assuming you actually have you've either contracted with the manufacturer, you have the production capacity yourself, you have the raw materials needed to do this, you have whatever technological requirements are needed in order to to fabricate this stuff, etc. So it's basically just very tiered in terms of how we would aim to roll it out.
So will players be able to generate missions to allow other players to come to their outposts that they planted down with the Pioneer and take away shipments of like mined resources? So say they've got a mining station there and they want to have somebody come take away the resources. Is that what you're expecting to do eventually?
Yeah, that's really just like the a higher tier of the service beacon, right? Which is I've got cargo, I can mark it, I can basically put out a request that says I'm willing to pay $1,000 for these 20 things to be delivered to that area, and then and then a player that's actually listening on his version of the service beacon, he's listening for transport missions or anything of interest to him. He accepts the contract, flies down. I've already mentioned things like the reputational ability to filter to make sure you're not handing your stuff off to a known thief. He may still be a thief, but he hasn't stolen a lot yet, therefore it's not on his record. So you give him the stuff. Now when he actually heads out there, to go deliver, it's like maybe he delivers it, at which point he gets paid, at which point he also gets credit. Now he's actually done a successful delivery mission. His reputation in that field goes up, and that's going to be very appealing to other people looking to hire those types of guys. On the other hand, he may decide, hey, this is really valuable stuff, and that guy was a sucker for entrusting me with it. And sure, my record's great now, but my record's so fantastic because I've only had really a lot of stuff that wasn't worth much. And now that I'm basically loaded up with with 20 SCUs worth of gold ore, I'm going to go ahead and basically take a walk on on the dark side and just go liquidate this myself at some black market. He'll get a fraction of the value that he would since he doesn't own this stuff, but it could still be a pretty effective payday. Now that said, at that point, his reputation is going to take a hit, and all of a sudden, anybody else that's basically requiring guys that don't have a criminal rating, et cetera, are not going to want to do any sort of contract.
Somebody's going to hire a bounty hunter.
That's exactly it. It's like, yep, and if it's a big enough crime, then now he's got a target on his head.
In your view, what is the final state of the subsumption model in the game? Is it like a full living universe, and will current server-based technology allow for that kind of potential overhead to cover all that?
Yeah, most of the subsumption framework is actually coming together for 3.0. There's a whole lot of evolutionary stuff that still needs to be done. But most of the big pieces in terms of how we craft the logic, how we pass values back and forth. There's the probability volumes, which is not directly subsumption, but it's very intimately tied to it, to where you can algorithmically specify what you should be seeing within an area, and then based upon probabilities, that will circle back over to libraries of content that was created with a subsumption editor, and figure out what it should what the system should bring into reality, so that you actually see something that mimics what you would if we really were simulating 10 million NPCs flying around this area. And so to me, where subsumption is going in the future is going to be refining all of that dynamic stuff to to where you're able to get a more interesting, less repetitive experience from flying around and just encountering life within the world. To give you an example of what I mean, imagine that you're flying from point A to point B, and you get pulled out of quantum drive because it says that there's someone in your path, and it's a freighter, and he's under attack by some pirates. So that scenario was pulled from from a library somewhere, or maybe those the different or maybe different modules were pulled and strung together dynamically and instantiated in this one scene that you're now seeing. But in order to make this simulated world interesting, you've got to ensure that what the player encounters doesn't always feel like just different variations on a theme. And that's where there's still a lot of work to be done, is basically getting We've got the framework, but now we actually need to move into the actual execution of getting all of those, bits and pieces, seamlessly, working together. And that's going to be, there's not going to be a binary moment at which, you just switch, you flip the switch and now you've got it. It's just going to be very evolutionary in terms of you've got a little bit, now you got a little bit more, now you got a little bit more. And this is part of the reason, it's one of the many reasons why we want to start going to the more defined release schedule. To where every few months we should be to a point on the content such that we can actually release stuff that, while it might not hit whatever arbitrary objective we would have identified 3 or 6 months ago for this particular time, it's definitely going to be an improvement versus what you saw 3 months ago. In other words, we're getting to the point where we can more rapidly iterate given the tools and technologies we already have, and so there's no longer the need for us to make big dictates in terms of we're going to have this feature, and we're going to have this feature, and we're going to have this feature, and we're not shipping anything until we've actually got all of these, and we're getting much closer. This is what I think 3.x is, as a series of releases is really going to be, is a lot of iterative development to where you're going to see the same stuff, but it's going to get better and better and better. You're going to see some professions in 3.0. You're going to see more in 3.1. You're going to see more in 3.2. You're going to have some ability to hook up with other players in terms of bounties in 3.0, but you'll have more in terms of more flexibility, more stuff of interest in 3.1 and 3.2 and 3.3. You'll be able to transport cargo in 3.0, but you can't yet extract that value yourself, which you will get in one of these subsequent ones, and then that comes with a lot of a lot of ripple-on effects. And so to me, where subsumption is naturally going is enabling the designers to more quickly and easily set up this simulated reality such that as you fly through it, you see things getting brought from the land of probability into reality, but with less repetition, such that it gets closer to feeling like these are all handcrafted custom scenarios, as opposed to stuff that's been welded together in dynamic fashion. And there's a lot of work. I don't want to basically minimize how much effort we'll have to go into that to kind of get to what we'd see as the promised land. But the neat part about it is that the effort is actually very easily tiered, such that it will be much simpler to show regular progress than what we've been able to do in the past.
We've got one question from the Nubifier. Bounty hunting a live player sounds kind of challenging. Have you thought about how that would be handled if a player logs off?
No, they can log off. Basically, if you log off, your character will remain, your ship will remain, etc., as long as someone else has got you in view. In other words, what we won't allow is, you've got a bounty on your head, I'm chasing you, and you log off and your ship disappears. Nope, your ship, I can see you, I'm right next to you, your ship will remain, you'll remain, I can basically, you log off, your ship stops, I board it, I shoot you, I get credit for the bounty. Alternatively, I don't have you in my sight. I'm tracking you, you're way over there, I'm way over here, I can't see you, I'm not in proximity to you, you log off. Sure, at that point, your character's gone. I can't interact with you, until you come back online. But the transgressions that are on your record, the fact that you've got a criminal record, the fact that you have a bounty on your head, those things don't go away until you deal with them. Just like in the real world, it's like, well, if you're basically wanted for murder on Tuesday, you're still wanted for murder on Wednesday. So the next time you log on, then anybody that comes into contact with you, or that's basically tracking your trail, is going to potentially be drawn to you if they're looking to actually take out people with a bounty on their head. And so it's about as realistic as you can make it in terms of, well, obviously we can't keep your character in the game forever, in perpetuity, when you're not there. But at the same time, we don't want to allow you to use that as an easy exploit to avoid the guys that are inevitably going to be coming for you. Like bounties, there will be There's a lot to it, and a lot of this will be tiered in over time. But for example, bounties will likely throw off all sorts of clues that trackers can follow in terms of, I've got a bounty on my head. I go to Area 18. The camera basically facially recognizes you and notes on the bounty hunter network or however we wind up implementing it that you've been seen at Area 18. And so all of a sudden, if you've got a bounty, if you've been, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of the system being auto-correcting, auto-balancing. It's like, well, you've been doing bad stuff. You're going to find it very hard to survive in an area where there's law and order, because law and order will basically start pushing back. And so then eventually you pay your fine, you basically pay your debt to society, or you get killed, it resets, whatever the case may be. What you will learn over time is, hey, when I'm bad and I do things that put a mark on my record, life becomes very difficult for me. So I'm going to do less of that, because I don't like people coming up and and basically and taking me out when all I'm trying to do is refuel, or when I'm basically trying to transport cargo, doing whatever it is you do. And so what you'll wind up having is some players will do it, but they're going to have to be more clever about it. So pirates will basically hang out in the lawless areas, and they'll dip into the more secure areas. They'll have to tolerate the fact that security will, NPC security and player security will be drawn to them when they're in that secure space. Anything that could basically detect, their position, who they are, etc., will ping interested parties, let them know where you are. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring a lot of traffic towards you. And so what you'll wind up seeing is players adjusting their play style to compensate. Well, I'll hang out in the lawless area, I'll go into the secure space, I'll take out a freighter quickly, salvage it as quickly as I can, because I know people may be coming, security may be coming at any minute. Then I'm going to jump in my ship, and then I'm going to get back to the lawless area. And this starts to put, you have lots and lots of consequences where all of a sudden, well, out in those lawless areas, you don't have nearly as much supply in terms of weaponry. You don't have the level of expertise in terms of the ability to repair hulls. And so all of a sudden, the prices you have to pay out there to re-equip your ship, or to repair your ship, or to get fuel, or whatever, might be 2 or 3 times more expensive. And so you'll find yourself going, well, I really wish I could basically cruise over to over to this planet, or to this moon, or to this outpost in order to basically get those consumer goods that I need to basically survive. And it's like, so you've got a record a mile long. It's like you're gonna face it's gonna be a really difficult track for you to get in there and and basically do that.
Very cool. I'm kind of curious on this one. You don't have to answer if you don't think you have the answer yet, but will you ever be able to pay off your own bounties?
We've talked about being able to pay off your own bounties, and I think probably just like in the real world, where we'll wind up going, it's not completely, we haven't reached a final decision, but I think where we're headed is that you'll be able to pay off lesser transgressions, and the bigger ones you're just going to have to deal with. And by that I mean, if you've killed lots of people, you're going to either get killed, will reset the meter, or basically you have to do the prison time or whatever the case may be. If you've done theft and other smaller things, or not done as much of it, then we'll allow you the capability to just go wash those from your record. And the security would also, security bounties, etc., all of this stuff, it's going to apply less pressure when you've done very low-key crimes and stuff. You're not going to have the big beefy battleships showing up when all you've done is basically jaywalk across the street or something.
Gotcha. Okay, so another question from the community, from Andrew Rawl. Can you describe some of the complexities with regard to the reputation system, and how would relationships be calculated? Will overall org reputation be the sum of all contained member relationships, or is it completely unique? Does the org get its own reputation? How will that work out?
Orgs would definitely have their own reputations. They would be a byproduct of their members' reputations, and the people that actually control the organization would have the capability to place limits in terms of what individuals' reputations can be before they're automatically ejected. And this is really just an administrative, enhancement so that you can more easily manage really, really large organizations, and so that you, the administrator, don't need to be online 24 hours a day dealing with, with players that might otherwise impact, the good name, or the bad name, as the case may be, of your organization. By this I mean, if you've got an organization that's geared towards, security, basically you provide, you've got a number of players and you're all focused upon providing security services to other players, other NPCs. In that type of an organization, you're not going to want, a criminal, a pirate. And so the administrator would basically, set the parameters of the org up and dictate, well, our tolerance for crime is nil, and a player may then join the organization, and after he's part of it, he may, wind up committing crimes. And so the administrator himself could manually kick him out, or assuming he's basically set up, these thresholds, once your criminal reputation rises beyond, a certain limit, then the org can automatically eject you.